The Alpha King disguised as a beggar to test his pack. Welcome to the Story King, where every tale holds a secret, and every secret changes everything. The smell of death hung in the air, but it wasn't coming from the beggar collapsed against the stone wall. It was coming from the pack itself. King Aldric had ruled the Shadow Moon territory for 7 years, yet tonight, dressed in rags that reeked of rotten river water, he saw his kingdom through different eyes. Eyes that were supposed to be blind. Eyes that were supposed to be dying. "Help, please," he rasped, letting his voice crack with the weakness of a wolf whose inner beast had gone silent. Around him, pack members hurried past, their well-fed bodies wrapped in furs and fine wool. Not one stopped, not one looked down. This was the test his beater had warned him against. "You don't want to know what you'll find," Garrett had said 3 nights ago, his scarred face grave in the firelight. "Some truths are better left buried, my king." But Aldric had heard the rumors. Whispers of Omegas going missing. Talk of food hoarded while the weak starved. Reports of pack members trading protection for favors that made his blood boil. He needed to see for himself if the rot had truly set in, if his carefully constructed hierarchy had become a cage for the powerless. Another hour passed. The cold seeped through his disguise, real enough that even his alpha constitution couldn't completely ward it off. He'd suppressed his aura so thoroughly that he appeared as nothing more than a dying rogue, worthless, dangerous, better left to freeze. Then he smelled her, honey and wildflowers, but underneath, hunger. Deep, gnawing hunger that had been ignored for days, maybe weeks. The scent was so heartbreakingly fragile that something in his chest tightened. Aldric didn't move, keeping his eyes half closed as footsteps approached. Small feet, hesitant. Through his lashes, he saw her, a young woman, too thin, her clothes patched and repatched. An Omega, he could tell by the way she moved, careful not to draw attention, as though invisibility was her only protection. She stopped 3 feet away. He heard her breathing quicken, smelled fear spike in her scent. Run, he thought. Everyone else had the sense to run. But she didn't. Are you hurt? Her voice was soft, musical despite its tremor. Aldric groaned, putting real pain into the sound. Not entirely false. His soul ached at what he was discovering. She came closer, kneeling beside him with a wince that suggested her own body protested the movement. This close, he could see the dark circles under her eyes, the way her collarbone jutted too sharply beneath her skin. "I don't have much," she whispered, and he felt her press something into his hand. "But please, take this." He opened his palm, a small cloth bundle, warm from being carried close to her body. The smell hit him, bread and cheese, a sliver of dried meat. A meal, her only meal, he realized, from the desperate hunger still emanating from her. Something dangerous stirred in Aldric's chest. His alpha wanted to rise, to throw off this disguise and demand to know why this woman was starving in his pack, under his protection. He forced the instinct down. "You're hungry," he rasped instead. "I can smell it." She flinched, probably wondering how a dying rogue could still sense such things. But she didn't take the food back. "I'll manage. You need it more." "Why?" The question came out harder than he intended. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous. Your pack," he gestured vaguely at the settlement around them, "they all know better than to help rogues." For a moment, something fierce flashed in her hazel eyes. "My pack," she said, and the bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut, "is very good at looking away from things they don't want to see." "Then why don't you?" She was quiet, and he risked opening his eyes fully to look at her. Really look at her. She was beautiful in the way wild things were beautiful, untamed despite obvious attempts to break her, delicate but not fragile. There was steel in that slender frame. "Because someone has to remember what was supposed to be," she finally said. "We're wolves. Pack, and pack means no one gets left behind." She laughed, a broken sound. "At least, that's what it should mean." Aldric's jaw clenched. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then, "Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated, tasting the name. When did you last eat, Lyra? That doesn't matter. It does to me. She stood abruptly, wrapping her thin arms around herself. Eat the food. Get your strength. Then leave this place. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. There's nothing good here anymore. Not for Omegas. Not for rogues. Not for anyone who can't fight their way to the top. She turned to go, but Aldric caught her wrist. Even through his suppressed aura, the contact sent a shock through them both. Her eyes widened, and for a heartbeat, he thought she recognized something in him. But how could she? He'd made sure his disguise was perfect. Thank you, he said, pouring sincerity into those two words. I won't forget this. Something flickered across her face, hope, maybe, or the memory of what hope used to feel like. Then she pulled away and disappeared into the shadows between buildings. Aldric sat there for a long moment, the cloth bundle heavy in his hands. Then he carefully tucked it into his ragged coat and stood. His beater had been right. He hadn't wanted to know this truth. But now that he did, everything was going to change. 3 nights later, Lyra was summoned to the pack hall. This never meant anything good for an Omega. She went because refusing would be worse, her heart hammering against her ribs as she climbed the stone steps she normally wasn't allowed to use. Inside, the hall was blazing with torches, packed with pack members all whispering urgently. At the front, on the raised platform where the Alpha's throne sat, stood King Aldric. But not the King Aldric they all knew, the distant, powerful figure who rarely appeared among his people. This Alpha was radiating fury barely contained. His eyes, normally golden amber, had gone wolf dark, and they were scanning the crowd with an intensity that made even the boldest wolves shrink back. 3 nights ago, his voice carried through the hall, a whip crack of authority. I walked among you. Not as your king, but as one of the broken, the forgotten. I wanted to see what kind of pack I had built. The whispers died. Lyra's blood turned to ice. No, it couldn't be. Do you know how many of you helped a dying rogue? Aldric continued. How many of you showed the basic decency that pack law demands? The silence was damning. One. The word fell like a hammer. One Omega who had nothing, who was starving herself, gave me her only meal. Lyra couldn't breathe. Around her, pack members were turning, looking, searching for the fool who'd helped a rogue. She tried to make herself smaller, invisible as always. But Aldric's eyes found her anyway. The moment the gazes locked, she saw recognition there. And something else. Something that made her wolf, dormant and suppressed for so long, suddenly raise its head. Lyra Ashwood, he said, and his voice had softened impossibly. Come forward. This was it. Punishment for breaking some rule she didn't know existed. Punishment for daring to help someone above her station. Lyra's legs trembled as she moved through the crowd that parted before her like water. Each step felt like walking to her execution. She reached the platform and dropped to her knees, eyes down. My king, I stand. The command was gentle but absolute. She stood on shaking legs. Aldric descended from his throne, and with each step closer, she felt the full weight of his alpha presence. Not suppressed now, not hidden. It should have driven her to her knees, should have made her bare her throat in submission. Instead, something in her chest awakened. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Close enough to smell cedar and smoke and something wild that called to parts of her she'd thought dead. You saved your king's life, he said quietly, so only she could hear. And in doing so, you saved this pack from itself. The rot ends tonight. The old order ends tonight. His hand rose, and she felt his fingers gentle under her chin, tilting her face up. You showed me what pack is supposed to mean. What an alpha is supposed to protect. I don't understand, she whispered. You will. His thumb brushed her cheek, and the tenderness in that small gesture made her eyes burn. Did you feel it, Lyra? When I touched you before? She had. God help her, she had. The bond doesn't lie, Aldric continued, And now she could hear something in his voice she never expected to hear from an Alpha King: vulnerability. And it doesn't care about rank or station. I've searched for years, never imagining my mate would be hidden in plain sight, starving in my own territory while I sat blind in my palace. Mate, the word ricocheted through her skull. Impossible, but her wolf knew, was singing with it, was reaching for him even as her human mind struggled to comprehend. I'm giving you a choice, Aldric said, and the hall had gone so silent she knew everyone could hear. Stand beside me and help me rebuild what I've let fall apart. Be my queen, my Luna, my equal. Or walk away, and I'll make sure you want for nothing, but I won't force this bond on you. Lyra's mind reeled. Yesterday she'd been invisible, worthless. Today she was being offered a crown. It was too much, too fast. She started, but movement at the back of the hall cut her off. A sound, breaking glass, screams, and then smoke, acrid and wrong, began billowing through the doors. Aldric spun, immediately moving to shield her with his body. Garrett, he roared, but his beater was already down, a dart protruding from his neck. More guards dropped. Wolves began shifting, panic spreading like wildfire. And through the chaos, through the smoke, Lyra saw figures moving, organized, purposeful, wearing masks that gleamed like silver. Wolfsbane, Aldric snarled, already weakening from the poison in the air. His eyes found Lyra's one more time. Whatever happens, run. Don't let them. He collapsed. Lyra caught him, or tried to, but they both went down hard. The smoke was burning her lungs, making her vision swim. Around them, wolves were falling like dominoes. A carefully planned attack. A coup. Strong hands grabbed her arms, hauling her away from Aldric's unconscious form. She fought, screaming, but she'd been weak before the smoke, and now she had nothing left. Through the haze, she saw someone approach the fallen king. A woman, elegant and cruel, smiled, wearing a crown that had no right to exist. Poor Aldric, the woman cooed, her voice carrying over the chaos. You always were too soft. But don't worry, I'll take good care of your throne. As for your little Omega mate, her eyes found Lyra's, glittering with malice. She'll make an excellent lesson about the price of stepping above one's station. Lyra's vision was going dark at the edges. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Aldric's hand, reaching across the stone floor toward her, his lips forming words she couldn't hear. Then, nothing. Thank you for reading The Story King, where the crown is just the beginning of the story. Subscribe to discover what happens when an Omega rises and a king falls.